Welcome back to the podcast. I'm going to be speaking about open relating in a marriage, and not just necessarily in a marriage, just how you can open relate or be in an open relationship, a non-monogamous relationship, and how me and my beautiful wife have been navigating this for the last couple of years. Trigger warning. If you have a very fixed, rigid mindset around relationships, around religion, around how things have to be, should be, got to be, this will probably trigger the shit out of you. So if you are open-minded and you're willing to see different perspectives and open your mind and lean more into this conversation, this will be very beneficial to you. The reason I'm having this conversation is I've had this conversation with about 4 or 5 people recently who know me intimately and have actually asked real deep questions on this stuff. And I answered it and I was like, well, this is actually quite valuable. I kind of want to share this, but I've been a little bit hesitant to share it, to be honest with you, because I know how many people get triggered by it and who don't agree with it. But I said, fuck it, I'm going to talk about it anyways and just share vulnerably what's working well for me and my wife, Georgia, what's showing up for us, the growth and the intimacy and the depth that's come with it, the pros and cons. There are pros and cons to everything in life. And I wanted to just share with you guys how we've gotten to where we are, how we navigate things, how we communicate, how we connect, and just how we manage this lifestyle, essentially. So there's my pre-frame out of the way. So one pre-frame I want to have as well, that you can have whatever relationship you want. There is no cookie cutter. You have to have a certain relationship, the white picket fence and all that stuff. Because what I want to get into, I've got a couple pre-frames for you guys. Number one, I'm still journeying my life. I'm only 27 years old. I've still got a lot of journeying, a lot of self-discovery, a lot of healing, a lot of things to come. I am not the world's best expert on relationships. I might wake up 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 days from now, and decide that, you know what, this is not for me. I'm not into the open relating, the non-monogamous relating. I want to go fully monogamous. That might be it. So I'm not like, this is the only way you have to do it. Back to what I just said. You can have any fucking relationship that you want. If you want to be fully monogamous, if you want to be non-monogamous, if you want to do more of a swinging aspect. I've had some people ask, what is open relating? I don't necessarily have the dictionary definition of it, but essentially monogamous is like you have one partner and that's it. You don't sleep with anyone else. You don't see anyone else. You are fully committed to it. That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is when you have like multiple partners that you date. So you're actually constantly dating other people. Me and my wife don't do that. We're kind of in the middle where we explore sensually, sexually with other partners, either together, like we have people join us in the bedroom, singles and couples, or we actually journey solo with other people. So that's kind of where we sit with that. So there's no, label that you can give that specifically. Back to what I just said, you can have whatever relationship you want. I want, with my partner, really deep union with her where we get to go super deep together. We get to heal together. We get to connect together. We get to do life together, have children together, live life together. And then I also, and she also wants to as well, explore desires in a healthy, integral way. So this is kind of where we're at right now. I've dropped into this and I've asked myself a couple of times, do I see myself getting to a point where I date multiple partners? I don't think so. My truth is no. I don't think that's where I want to head. Again, I might wake up 5 years from now and that's changed, but as of right now, that's not what I want. I love our union that we have together, hence why I've married my beautiful wife. And I want to have that sacredness where we get to go super deep with our exploration, our intimacy, our connection, our communication, our healing, our growth, and then also be able to explore other desires as well in a healthy way. So that's kind of what it is. And along that spectrum, there's so many other iterations of it. Again, it's whatever you want and whatever feels right for you. The second pre-frame, whenever you hear the words have to, ought to, got to, should, must, whenever you hear someone saying that type of language, someone is projecting their values, expectations onto someone else. Now, this ties a lot into tradition and religion, where you have to do this, you can't do this, you're going to go to hell if you do this. There's these just massive fucking projections of what is right or wrong. Now, again, I trigger warned you because I'm probably going to trigger a lot of people, and that's okay. I'm here to trigger you. And remember, whenever you're triggered, it's revealing a belief that you're very rigid on or a wound you haven't healed through. So just keep that in mind as I talk. So a lot of people, and I've spoken about this, who are hardcore religious is like, that's not the right way to do it. You can't do this. You have to do this. You must, whatever, stay with this structure of relationship. They're just projecting their conditioning and their beliefs onto someone else. Because you go to another country with a different religion, with a different set of beliefs, and it's going to be completely fucking different. So who's right or wrong? No one is. It's just whatever your truth is. Because there are people, I actually did a little bit of research before I jumped on this call, on this podcast. There are many cultures and countries that practice non-monogamy still to this day. There are cultures in the Middle East, in Africa, in Indonesia, India, and other places in the world who practice this. So who's right or wrong? You or them? It's whatever your beliefs are. And this is back to what I said. You can have whatever the hell you want. So when you ever hear someone, just for yourself, whenever you hear you have to, you ought to, you got to, you should, you must, someone is projecting values onto someone else. So just keep that in mind. So how did we get here? How did we get to this point? So when I grew up with my mum and dad who didn't have a very healthy relationship. So I actually had a lot of fears and wounds in relationships. My father cheated on my partner, my brother, that didn't sound right. My father cheated on my mother, on my mum, and they had a very dysfunctional relationship, very unhealthy, a lot of fights, physical, verbal, mental violence against each other, and it wasn't healthy. And then I grew up in a football environment. I've got a sports background, rugby league, for anyone that follows rugby league. And I come from a culture from that where my mates, we would go out, have a party on the weekend. They would cheat on their partner from school, and then they would go to the partner at school and just lie to their face about what they did on the weekend. And I hated that. So I had a lot of like limiting beliefs around relationships. And then I got into self-development. I started working on my beliefs, challenging my beliefs. And eventually it led me to the relationship topic where I've done a lot of healing. I've still got a lot of healing to do. And it led me to 2 books. There's 2 books I want to really recommend that you look into and that you can explore at your own time. The first book is The Ethical Slut. So The Ethical Slut. And I read this 5 years ago. Sorry, longer than that. It was before I met Georgia. So before I met my wife, I had read this book. So it would have been 7 years ago now that I read this book. And it just really opened my eyes because I've come from the traditional white picket fence. You have to have one partner. This is all it is. This is who you have to be, got to be, should be. You have to go to church. You believe a very Catholic background. And for me, one of my gifts is I question everything. And I encourage you to do the same, by the way. Question fucking everything. Why does life have to be this way? Something I really love about Elon Musk, and whether you're a fan of him or not, is his attitude is like, tell me why this can't be done, and I'll show you why this can be done. And this will show up again later on in this conversation. So I read this book, The Way of the Ethical Slut, and it just showed me like another world where it's like you don't have to have the traditional way of doing things because it's just very conditioned from religion, from society, from whatever fucking country you grew up with, of what you have to do when it comes to relationships. And my attitude, I question everything. Just like for people who's in business or if you're an entrepreneur, you've probably read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, where he pretty much teaches you the difference between how rich people think and how poor people think. And there's no right or wrong between the two. It's just most people are conditioned to be poor. Trade time for money, go get a job, go work there for 50 years, get a retirement, get a house, get a mortgage, retire and die with no money. Versus learn how to leverage money and actually build a system and scale your money. Again, it's just different ways of thinking. So that book really opened up my mind. I'm like, okay, there's other ways you can do this, but there's still a lot more to come. The second book that I recommend, I'm actually rereading this. I actually started rereading this the other day. It's called The Enlightened Sex Manual, Sexual Skills for the Superior Lover. And it's just all around sex and how to do it in an integral way. So recommend doing that. I read this about 6 years ago and I'm just rereading it right now. So it took me down that pathway and it opened my mind up. And I'm like, okay, there is a way to do this. I have a desire to, one, what do I want? In my relationship, I want intimacy, I want depth, I want connection, I want to have kids, I want to have a beautiful, loving relationship, what I didn't have as my role models growing up. But honestly, I want to be able to explore sexually because I believe sex, and I'll get to this soon, sex and the art of sex and the act of sex is such an enlightening, empowering, expansive, healing act. I'm going to get back to that soon. So I've got that desire where I've had a lot of sexual energy as a kid. I've just had a lot of it. I've got a lot of energy, ADHD, autistic, Asperger's. I've always had a lot of energy and a lot of sexual energy in me. And I honestly struggled to see myself staying sexual with one partner for the rest of my life. Now, some people say that's lack of sexual discipline, and I'm going to come back to that soon because that's a point that I want to touch on. But that's just what I wanted. I said so before I even started dating Georgia, and this is a point I highly recommend that you guys do. Before you get into a partnership, or if you're already in a partnership, have the open conversation. I remember telling Georgia before we started dating, so this is over 5.5 years ago now, I said, baby, I can't remember what I used to call her back then, Georgia, I love you. this is even before we said the I love you. I said, look, I don't know where I'm at right now. I'm still on my self-discovery journey. I would have been, 22 at the time, or 21, 22 at the time. And I told her, I said, look, I don't know what I want my relationship to look like definitively right now, but I want to lean into this. I want to look into exploring, into potentially swinging, into just exploring sexually, because I have a lot of curiosity and desire to lean into this. Is that something that you are open to exploring with me when we get there? And it wasn't like, hey, we have to have sex with fucking everyone every single weekend. We're going to go all these like swingers parties, all that stuff. Because I didn't know what I wanted back then. And I still don't. I'm still figuring that out, right? So I had that conversation at the start before we got together. Because one of the big takeaways I want to share with you is make sure that your partner and you are on the same page. You actually speak your fucking truth. What is it that you truly desire from a relationship? And if it's not aligned, maybe you're with the wrong partner. That's a real conversation. That's why I recommend having these conversations before you actually get more official together. I'm going off track. I've got all these notes. I'm not even touching them all. But let's go to this part. This is what has been a journey for me, and I'm still journeying this. But I've heard a lot of people say why you can't do this. So I want to touch on those. So why can't you be in a non-monogamous relationship, essentially? Number one, integrity. So and this is my counter to that. People say you can't do it because it's out of integrity. How many people are in monogamous relationships and they lack fucking integrity in that relationship? They treat their partner like shit. They talk to them like shit. They abuse them. They manipulate them. They're narcissistic to them. There's fucking millions. I even got some stats here. I Googled before. 43% of marriages end. 16% of marriages, someone cheats in that relationship. So is it the structure that makes the integrity, or is it the people in the relationship that have the integrity? Because I don't believe it's the structure that makes something integral or not. You can have a fucked up monogamous relationship, like an unhealthy monogamous relationship, right? You've probably been there. Most people have had a pretty toxic relationship, or you know someone who's been through one, right? And you can also have an unhealthy non-monogamous relationship. I've seen people like that. I know people like that because I've connected with some people in the space, and I know they don't do it out of integrity. They do it out of the wrong energy. So one of the pillars of actually making this a successful journey for you is to do it from integrity. So it's one point that I agree with people that say you can't do it because you're not doing it with integrity. I don't agree with the way they say it, but I agree with all relationships, regardless of the structure that you're in, needs to be done from a foundation of integrity. Because if you're not respectful to your partner, you don't trust your partner, you're not honest with your partner, you hide things from your partner, you shame yourself, you shame your partner, that relationship's going to end, regardless of the fucking structure that you're in. So I agree it needs integrity, but I don't believe the structure dictates whether there's integrity in the relationship or not. Next point, sexual discipline. I actually mentioned this before. I've heard some people say, well, that's just you're lacking sexual discipline because you just want to sleep with everyone. And I see some truth to that. There's a shadow expression of that. Yes, there are some people that are addicted to sex where it's like they just can't control themselves. I agree with that. So there's an aspect of having sexual discipline and actually circulating your sexual energy, using sexual transmutation, if you're familiar with that term, where you circulate your sexual energy and you use it for things besides the act of. It's from the book Think and Grow Rich. It's one of the not one of the main chapters, one of the chapters in there is all about sexual energy. And I agree with that. But if you're saying that sexual discipline is the reason and you're being too sexual essentially, take that to the ultimate extreme the other way. Never have sex besides for reproduction. Only have sex to have children. Because that's the ultimate extreme the other way. So where's the line of where is it okay, or where are you not being disciplined or not? It's a discerning question. Where's the line between I want to explore that because I have genuine desires and exploration that wants to be done there, and it's calling me to go down that pathway, versus you're just being a fucking sex addict. And again, there's no right. The only person that can answer that is yourself. And that's where you need to tune in. And I've tuned in with myself many times. Am I doing this for healthy reasons? Am I doing this from a healed or a hurt perspective? Am I doing this because I feel insecure and I'm looking for validation? Or am I doing this because I have a desire I want to explore and I'm going to do it from an integral space? So that's a tricky, all of these can be tricky, but it's the space you're coming from. It's not to do with the structure. It's not to do with, yes, these points. It's not what you do. It's why you're doing it and what energy you're doing it from. And that's been a big realization from going down this pathway. And the last point of why this can't be done is it's wrong. And that is only wrong according to the tradition and the expectations that you've been conditioned to. If you've come from a certain religious belief or a certain social belief that it can't be done, it shouldn't be done, it's wrong, it's stupid, you're going to go to hell because of it, that's just your fucking conditioning. If I dropped you, if you were born in a different country, to a different religion, to different parents, to a different environment, you would believe different things. Whatever you believe right now of what can't be done, should be done, whatever, it's just your conditioning. And no right or wrong, stay true to your beliefs. I have my beliefs I'm very true to, but I'm also flexible. It's being firm but flexible with your beliefs, being open-minded to it. Interesting. Hopefully you're getting some of those interesting thoughts from listening to this conversation. Let's go into the pros and cons. So there are pros and cons to all dynamics. I'm just going to comment on the one that we're in right now. So our dynamic, like I mentioned earlier, we are not fully open with many wives or many partners. I don't want that, and my partner doesn't want that either. She doesn't want that. She wants to explore desires in a healthy, integral way, and also have that deep connection and intimacy and trust and love with me and her together. So the pros and cons to this. Number one, the pros is you get to explore. You get to actually lean into desires. It's like when you meet someone, you're like, fuck, there's just that chemistry, there's that connection there. I would love to connect with you. I'd love to explore with you. I'd love to actually see if there's anything here, if that's right for that person. So it gives you the ability to do that, which is really, really cool. It requires, this is a pro and a con, it requires a lot of open communication because your insecurities come up like no fucking tomorrow. A ton of my insecurities come up. A ton of George's have come up, especially leading into when we're going to have an exploration, whether it's single, either together or solo. A ton of our wounds come up. A ton of our insecurities come up. I've been triggered like no fucking tomorrow, and so is she. And guess what? When you have the awareness, the integrity, and the skill set to heal through that wound, you get to heal like no fucking tomorrow. If you've watched some of my content, you've probably heard me talk about nothing triggers you, it reveals what's inside of you. So whenever you get triggered, you get insecure, you get anger, you get frustrated, you disassociate, you get angry, you get anxious. If it's not life-threatening, it's ego-threatening. So if you're not actually in danger, which for hopefully 90% of your day, you're not in danger. Whenever you're triggered, it's revealing a wound or a belief that's getting challenged that you can then lean into. And relationships are the ones, your intimate relationship, regardless of the structure, your intimate relationship is what's going to reveal the most amount of wounds compared to anything else. Business will as well, and children will as well, but a relationship, a deep relationship, will do the most of that. It will do it more than anything else. Why? They just see you more than anyone else. They're going to see the depths of you that no one else really gets to see. Now, to turbocharge that, an open relationship or open relating does that to next level. It really reveals it. I've had so many insecurities, inadequacies, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, all this shit come up. And guess what? I speak into it. And Georgia speaks into it as well. And we bring it up. It's like we had one, Georgia had an exploration with a single person, like as in she had a solo experience, I think a couple of months ago. And leading up to it, I had all this stuff come up. Am I worthy? Do you still love me? Are you going to leave me? All this stuff came up. And that's for me to sit with and to process and lean into and communicate. And the same thing with her. When I had a solo experience with someone, she had all her stuff in there. And that requires us to actually communicate, come together, and prioritize us and connect with us. I've got some rules that I'll get to soon of how we actually navigate that stuff. So they'll be coming in a couple of minutes. But it requires just a ton of open communication. It requires a ton of healing. You're going to get triggered like no fucking tomorrow. So the gift of that, if you've got the ability to lean into it and do it in an integral, healthy way, you get to fucking heal like no tomorrow. I've healed a lot just by going down this pathway. And we're pretty fresh to it. Like we've only been, I guess, exploring properly for about 3 years now. And I'm sure there's going to be a ton more. Now, this is something that I really enjoy sharing. One of the biggest, most painful wounds human beings can experience is rejection. It's one of the most painful things human beings at our core can experience. Now, what is one of the most, I think it is the most or almost the biggest opportunity to be rejected? It is in sex. Think about this. If you were, or if I was to, offer myself sexually to someone, to you, don't take that offensively, hopefully. But say I offered myself sexually to you, full naked, everything's out. If I was to offer myself to be received by you and loved and praised and wanted by you, if you were to reject me in that moment, That is one of the most hurtful things you can experience. So whenever it's the most hurtful, it's also the most healing. So to actually lean into those, holy shit, I have had a lot of insecurities come up, a lot of wounds come up, but a lot of healing off the back end of it because of the structure. So that's a big pro and con of doing this. If you're able to handle the level of shit that comes up. I remember I had a conversation with someone. He's a really good friend of mine. If he's watching this, you'll know who you are. And I called him and I just said, hey man, look, I'm navigating this. He's in his, sorry if I get your age wrong, I think he's in his 50s. And he's journeyed monogamy. He's journeyed non-monogamy. He's been married. He's got children. And something that he just shared with me is like, mate, your wounds are going to come up. Get ready for that. I was like, fuck, they already are. Like, I already feel nervous. I feel anxious. I feel all these things are coming up. He's like, mate, just lean into them. And he knows who I am. He knows I'm all about healing. So he's like, just lean into that. Lean into those and heal through those, because that's a beautiful gift of where you're going. And he also gave me a tip, which is really serving me, is just think about it as seasons. I mentioned at the start of this podcast, I might wake up 5 years from now and be like, fuck, this ain't for me. And I don't want to do this anymore. And I'd obviously have to check in to see where my partner is. And if she's like, hey, no, I love this lifestyle, I want this to be my relationship long term, then we might not be the right fit for each other. And that's cool. Not every partner that you get with is meant to be your partner for the rest of your life. And that might trigger some people as well, depending on your beliefs. How many people go through multiple different relationships and if they're doing it in a healthy, integral, healing way, their relationships can get better and evolve better because they're attracting the right person into their life. So, off topic, is it can be seasonal. So it's just a season that I'm in right now, me and my partner that we're in, and it might change. And that's okay as well. We just speak our truth. So, last one. How do we do this? How do we actually tactically, practically do this stuff? Firstly, both partners need to want to. Both partners need to want to go down this pathway. You can't have one partner that wants it and they have the desires to, and the other partner's like, piss off, I never want this. You need to be integral. And this is where I do see a lot of people, and I'm generalizing here, but generally it is men, from what I've seen, who kind of force their partner and manipulate their partner into doing this, and all they do is get women involved because they want to have sex with more women, but they don't let their partner experience other men. And I don't see that as integral. Now, are there relationships where women just want more women and they don't want other men? Yes, of course, but that's not what I'm referring to. It's where the man's like, I want more sex with other women, but you're not allowed to touch any other men. Again, some relationships want that, but some don't. It's what do you both want, and are you both open to leaning into that and exploring that together? That's the conversation that needs to be had. And I would recommend it if you're a single person, have that conversation early on in the dating area. Now, if you're in a relationship right now, have the courage to have a beautiful conversation with your partner. Your partner might actually have the same thing. They just haven't been courageous enough to have the conversation. You might actually have it and you're like, fuck, I've been thinking about this for the last 5 years. I just didn't think you were open to it. I was too scared to ask you about it. And you might have the conversation where they're like, hey, look, nah, I never want that. That's not for me. And that's cool as well. Then you need to lean into what's a non-negotiable for you. You get one life. Are you missing that part of yourself where you want to go down that pathway and it means that much to you that you're willing to end that relationship and go down that pathway? Doing it from integral reasons, not hurt reasons. Maybe you got to discern yourself. Is this a hurt or a healed decision? So have the conversation. Long story short, have the conversation. Ideally at the start, before you guys really get serious. If you're already in a relationship, bring up the conversation in a healthy way. Have a drink together, have a glass of wine together, smoke a bit of weed together, get nice and relaxed together, and just lean into it. Hey babe, can I have a really open conversation with you? There's been something on my heart and my mind lately that I just really want to ask you. And I don't want you to take it by any offense, because I love you, I want to be with you, and yeah, I just want to speak my truth. Is that okay? Just let them know. Lean into it. Now, this is the number one rule for us. Number one, the relationship with you two, or whatever the dynamic is, that comes first. This is something I'm really passionate about, so you'll get a bit of energy from me on this one. I think that one of the stupidest mentalities when it comes to relationships is when people say things along the lines of, our relationship's shit, let's open it up to try fix it. Or let's have a child to try fix it. Now, there will be some rare circumstances where that does work. But if your relationship, the foundation of relationship is fucking terrible, it's rocky, you're not connected, your intimacy is shit, your communication is shit, you're not loving each other, trying to open it up is the worst fucking thing you can do. Or having another kid, if you think that's your answer to solving it, I don't think that's the answer to it. I'm not a parent, so I can't speak on it, but I don't think that's the answer. I believe the answer is actually prioritizing your own relationship, connecting with each other, loving each other, worshiping each other, honoring each other, like being a good partner for each other. And I'll give you a live example. We've had examples where we've had a couple or a single lined up to come over to our house that day. And me and Georgia tuned into each other and we said, babe, I don't think we're ready for this right now. Let's reschedule. And we just rain check the person. Soz to the person, but our relationship comes first. So you must be in a really good space before you go down this pathway. Don't think that this is just easy sunshine rainbows, because what I just said before, you can have a lot of fucking wounds come up, my friend. And if you're not at a space where you can fucking handle it and you're ready for it, then good luck. You're jumping straight into the deep end and you might not be able to handle it. Because there's been times where me and Georgia have gone through some wounds, some things have come up, and we just said, hey, baby, for the next couple of months, I don't want either of us exploring. I want to prioritize us. I just want to take a couple of months for us to really connect, practice our intimacy, spend some time connecting, and just recalibrate, because we come first. The relationship comes first. Think of just the relationship itself as the foundation. And then the swinging and the exploring, that's the cherry on top. That's the nice to have. Because if your relationship's fucked and you're just avoiding it by going out and sleeping with other people, your relationship's going to end. I guarantee it's going to end. So number one rule, prioritize your relationship. Make sure you guys are loving each other, connected with each other, intimate with each other. And the foundation of your relationship is rock solid, because then you can trust each other. You can communicate. You can handle the triggers and the wounds that come up, that are going to come up, my friend. They're going to come up. I guarantee it too. The second point I had was open communication. I kind of just alluded to that, where you got to openly communicate. Like if something comes up on my heart, and this is, I joke with Georgia about this. Whenever we have a sauna at home, and I'll do often a meditation in the sauna. And when I meditate, I'm like tuning into myself, what emotions are coming up for me, what thoughts are coming up for me, what's alive for me right now. And then a lot of the time after the sauna, I'll go over to Georgia and just like unpack it all onto her. And I just say, hey baby, are you in a safe space? Do you feel, have you got the bandwidth to listen to me right now? And I'll just literally like unpack everything that came up. Hey baby, I feel like I'm not being integral here. I feel like I'm not doing my best here. I feel like I can improve here, and all that stuff. So it requires a lot of open communication. Whatever you're hiding from your partner, whatever you're shaming yourself for, whatever you're resenting your partner for, you gotta get that shit out in the open. And that's not just open relating, that's normal fucking relationships. That's normal. That's any form of relationships. You gotta be beautifully open with your communication. Third step was integrity. I've mentioned that word 1,000 times on this podcast. Do it from a level of integrity. If you're like, I feel insecure and I'm looking for validation from someone else and our relationship's shit and I just want to go find it elsewhere, I don't see that as integral. Make sure your partner feels loved. Make sure your partner and you are connected. Your intimacy is great. Your communication is great. Your love is great. Your relationship is great. And then you can look into exploring this stuff. We have a checklist, personally, and I can't speak on George's behalf, but have a checklist of what you look for. So for me, there's the physical attraction, there's the energetic attraction. So for me, it's a level of safety, because I'm still journeying my stuff. There's still a lot of wounds that I have sexually that I'm working through. So making sure there's a level of safety and the energetic connection is there before I connect with anyone from either together or a solo experience. I connect with the person in person. So we catch up for a coffee, we go for a walk together, and we just make sure the dynamics there, the energy's there. Because I'm not looking for just like a quick sex. I'm trying to use the right words, but I'm looking for like connection depth with what I'm looking for. So that's my personal checklist, physically, energetically, and obviously making sure that what their intention is for it as well. And we are so open with it, our communication. Georgia knows who I'm connecting with. I know who she's connecting with. It's not like we're hiding it. We're like keeping it in the shadows, because that's where some real bad habits and things can come from. So we're open with it. We talk about it. Hey babe, there's a person I've just connected with online or in person. There's someone that I'm actually interested in potentially exploring. How does that feel for you? We say that. She told me she found one, I think last week, that she just found on Instagram, that they connected, they started talking. And I said, baby, that's fine. Thank you for communicating that with me. We have like a frequency of how frequent we can do it, and that's forever molding. It's like kind of every 8-10 weeks right now of how often we do it, because one of my points that I have, my checklist, is timing. Because I'm running a business. Like I'm doing podcasts, I'm doing content, I'm writing a book. Like I've got a life, and then I've got my relationship as well. So it's also making sure the timing's right, which is not obviously ideal a lot of the time. So sometimes it's hard to get the timing right. But we have a frequency which is evolving. Right now, it's kind of like every 10 to 8 to 10 weeks is like how frequently we'd be okay with either ourselves going solo or someone coming in with us together. So that's something to lean into. Finding people, that's something I wrote out. How to find these people. It's been hard. I'm not going to lie. It's been hard to find someone who ticks the boxes for me, and for Georgia as well. Physically, energetically, they're open to it. The timing makes sense. So the finding has been hard, just to be real with you. But if you just connect with people in the right environments, who have the right energy, who you say it from an open, vulnerable space, you're like, hey, look, just to be real, this is, I have this connection, or I feel this with you. This is what I'm open to. I'm looking for. Is that something you're open to? Just having the open conversation, the open question can be hard. I've struggled with that personally. I've struggled with that a lot, but that's something you can lean into as you go through that. That's the podcast for today. I hope you got some value from it. I'll give you a quick summary because that was a lot. Number one, you can have your own, whatever relationship style you want, you can have that as long as your partner is aligned with that and you're doing it from a sense of integrity, you're doing it with openness, you're doing it with love, you're prioritizing your relationship with whatever, either person or multiple people, they come first. Make sure you guys are in a really beautiful, integral, loving space, and then you can lean into it. Make sure your communication is very high. Your wounds are going to come up. You're going to have to heal through those and address those. That's a beautiful part of going down this pathway. Make sure your communication's high. I just said that. Have a checklist of what you're looking for. Don't be desperate from it. If you guys need to pause, just pause. Like I said, I think we've pulled the pin on 3 people. So 3 separate times. We had someone come, a couple or a single come into our house that day or that night, and we just pulled the pin on them. And we communicated, and the people that obviously understand, they respect and they understand, just say, hey, look, I'm sorry to do this, but we've just had a lot of things come up for us, and we're just not in the right headspace to do this. We'd love to rain check and book in another time. So don't feel scared of doing that. Look after your relationship. Your relationship comes first. And lean into it. It's a journey. It's been a great journey for me. Those books I recommended, The Ethical Slut and The Enlightened Sex Manual, which I'm currently rereading, has helped me a lot with this. I hope you got value from this. If you've got any questions, I'd love to hear your honest thoughts below. If you totally disagree with me, that's all good. If you agree with it, you got some value from this, whack it down below. And if you ever want to have a conversation with me about this stuff, I love this stuff. I don't have many conscious people that I can actually talk to about this, but if you want to have a conversation, send me a DM. I'm happy to talk to you about this stuff because I find this interesting. And happy exploring, you beautiful humans. I love you. Thank you for listening. Bye.